co-presenter Kina, but she is the drive coach right now for 1678 in the last match of the day, so she'll show up in a little bit. So I'm going to try to wing it through this part. She's actually knows more in detail about how the match strategy works in specific, but I'm going to go back and I'll be talking about some of the key points later on in this presentation as well. So just telling you a little bit more, I'm a scouting and strategy mentor for the team, and I've been in that role since 2012. Kina, she's been the match strategist for the last 2 years, and she's now the team captain as well, and she works in hardware design. So the first question is, why is strategy important? And of course, you want to go into a match knowing what you're going to do. You want to know what type of preparation and execution you need to undertake, and you want to look for alliances or develop your alliances so they work. We'll have some Q&A at the end, and you'll be able to follow up with any questions that you have. So I'm going to actually go through and answer the question. Oh, Kina, it's just in time.
Okay, so we will begin with a section about preparation. So what our team does is on kickoff weekend, we actually do a team-wide discussion where we begin by fully reading the entire game manual and then taking a rules test, which all of the members of our team have to pass with around 80% or higher, just to make sure that everyone has the same amount of baseline knowledge and they just understand the fundamentals of the game prior to having a team-wide discussion. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we then go into our whats and our hows, which are basically our final goals, which is our whats, and then our hows, which are the method through which we actually reach those final goals. So for example, a what might be like, we want to be able to do a buddy climb of some sort in this game, or we want to be able to just score on the high row. And then a how would be more of a mechanical design or just some sort of programming, more technical stuff. The full team is involved in the whats. The hows are more of our specific sub-teams would take care of those. So basically the big importance of the kickoff weekend is to just give us all time to digest the game, make sure that we all have the same understanding, and then just talk about and share all of our ideas through the entire team, including sub-teams like business and media who might not normally get as much of a say in the technical parts of our robot, but they still have good ideas to contribute that then the technical teams can work on. So we're all just trying to predict the future strategies that might emerge from this game and what some common designs might look like. So in addition, prior to all of our events, we tried to do scouting, and we also try to take data during the events. So usually there's two main sections, which is live match data that we're collecting from our scouts, and pit data, which we collect on practice match day. So as the pit strategist, I would normally be going around collecting pit data. We have a different set of variables or just quantities that we want to collect during pit scouting. So common year-round features would be drivetrain type, just photos of their individual mechanisms, and just aspects about their mechanisms. This year, it's can you pick up from the ground? What type of game pieces do you guys pick up? And we also do have a dedicated group of students called our SEALs, who are specifically there to help our alliance partners maximize their ability prior to the match, just make sure we're all ready to perform our best. So additionally, prior to each match, we have to each think about what our goals for the match are. So in some cases, we want to go for that full RP. We feel like we have the scoring capability. We can make all of those thresholds. But in some cases, we might not be able to do that. So we would actually have to focus on the bonus RP and just get just make sure that we get those 2 bonus RP instead of wasting our time trying to get a win that we are not capable of getting. So just knowing when to cut your losses is a very important skill, and just deciding what to focus on and making sure that your entire alliance is on the same page. So part of what we do is we analyze our match schedule ahead of time, so as soon as it comes out, our entire strategy team is aware. And we start to think about like what our toughest matches are, just outline those. So our SEALs team can start helping our teammates, or like we can just make sure that we have discussed our strategy like prior to the actual match, so we're just all very well versed on the game plan. So working with our partners early, make sure that we're not like frantically rushing to make a strategy like in queue or like right when we're loading onto the field, which is just very stressful for everyone involved. So, and then we move into the execution portion, which is match strategy. So what we try to do is grab a representative from each team, like their drive team, or if they have a dedicated match strategist, we want to discuss with all 3 teams present of the entire alliance. We want to make sure that everyone is represented and we take everyone's individual capabilities into account. So like if a partner like has some sort of information that we might not have from our personal scouting data, we should take that into account. And just make sure that we are like orienting our auto routines in the way that's most compatible for all 3 of our teams. So in some cases of like what I might want to do, which is run our like, in this case this year, we might want to run our 3Ps, which like theoretically would be more optimal, but then our 2 alliance partners, like they don't have a center auto, so we would just instead run our center auto, which might decrease like the amount of game pieces that we score, but that's okay because that maximizes our overall like alliance like maximum during auto. So additionally, during teleop, we want to see like which of our alliance partners are strongest scorers, or if defense might be more worthwhile. So in some cases, that point differential from defense is actually worth more than putting a bunch of robots on offense when you have like diminishing like returns, like when you have all 3 robots on offense. Your real limiting factor is just intake locations, traffic on the field. In some cases, it's better to just do like 2 offense, 1 defense, or even in some cases 2 defense, 1 offense. And then finally, in endgame, we want to see like individual robots' speeds at completing endgame tasks, as well as their compatibility if we can both do the same tasks together, or if it's better for one robot to stay out to continue doing the main scoring action of the game and just avoid endgame entirely and let their partners take care of it. Okay. So we also try to take into account our alliance's capabilities as compared to our opposing alliance's capabilities. With years that have a lot of cross-alliance interaction, this is especially important. This year it's a little less, but mostly we would look at if there are game pieces that we might want to clean up from the other side of the field. Or just like if we know what their autos are, we know what game pieces might be in the middle, we can strategize around that. In previous years, like maybe 2022, we would think about like which robot we want to play defense most on, or just a robot that might perform worse under defense than their alliance partners. So we would look at strengths, weaknesses, their predicted roles and actions, and then sometimes we can also predict like which robots are playing defense on our alliance. So then during the early season, we tend to see like lower scores, less defense, more offense, and just focusing on getting the RPs. But then as we progress in the season, like scores get higher, teams get more complicated strategies, they're more well-versed in the gameplay, and they have better robots. So you might see some development of complicated strategies or just more defense being played. Depends on the year, but yeah. And then finally, we, as 1678, we have a specific role called the match strategist, who is actually separate from our drive coach. In most of our normal events, Michael Corsetto is our drive coach, and I am our match strategist. So I actually have the freedom to move around separately from my drive team and communicate with our alliance members without having to like make it to queue or like make sure that our drive team is like where they're supposed to be. And I just have to communicate with our drive coach, and then he then communicates everything with our drive team and our full alliance. So basically my role is that I can meet with our alliance partners in advance of the match, so we're all on the same page, and then they would meet one more time during a pre-match huddle, so like in queue or like as we're loading up, everyone just knows like what the plan is. And I also do have a large clipboard, which some of you might have seen, which has like a full like match flow. So my job is to make the drive team's job as easy as possible. I want them to not have to think about strategy at all. So this is the example. This is what our 2023 board looks like. So we separated it into 3 stages. There's auto, directly after auto, and then teleop. We also have like our teleop scoring diagram, and then we also have a diagram for endgame, which helps with positioning. So all of this is driver, like from the perspective of the driver, and it's to make all of that information about the game as easy to find as possible, and so everyone can see what we're doing in each stage of the game. All right, so this is more of like Richard's section, but these are alliances that I've worked in the past, so in FRC history when we were in previous events.
So you want me to take over?
Sure.
Okay. So this part I do know about. So I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the history of 1678, because prior to 2010, 1678 was not a particularly effective team. They made the quarterfinals in all of their regionals, and the regional they went to, which was Sacramento, but they never advanced out of the quarterfinal, and they were never an alliance captain. And in 2010, things started to change. They got to be an alliance captain. They still got, we still got knocked out in quarterfinals. 2011, we finally won the Sacramento regional, but we hadn't really, we got to champs, didn't really get very far in that. And then things in 2012 really started to change. We won Sacramento Regional. We lost at Silicon Valley but played effectively. And then at Champs, we actually got picked 3rd in the draft. It was actually a mistake that we made in maintenance that caused us to lose in the quarterfinals. Finally, in 2013, we switched from paper scouting to electronic scouting, and there's actually a couple workshops on our electronic scouting system here that you can follow up with, and Andy can tell you all about it, because that's one of the things he does. And that seemed to be a really critical change in the way that our scouting worked. We were able to communicate directly through an electronic app on our phones. I have one here, with the match strategy, and they were able to talk to teams about their abilities and set match strategy based on data, hard data that was almost in real time. And that seemed to make a big difference in our strategy. It also made it so that we switched from focusing on how our robot ran, just how our robot was, to thinking about the alliance. We thought about how we constructed our alliance. We thought about how we interacted with the alliance. And that was really like the big lift that we took in that year. In 2013, one of the big key differences that I'm going to talk about was there were what were called full court shooters of the Frisbees in Ultimate Ascent. And we developed a strategy to actually focus on getting full court shooters and then protect them during the match, even though it inhibited our offensive scoring to do that. So we were trying to maximize what our alliance could do, not what we could do as a robot. So next slide. So as Keena said, the alliance strategy really begins at kickoff, and we think about what we're going to assign as tasks to each one of the members of our alliance when we're in kickoff in that way. And what we decide is we actually sort out in those strategy sessions types of robots that we think of in terms of ability levels at the competition. So we think about where rookies are going to be, we think about where Hall of Fame teams are going to be, and where robots are going to be in between in terms of abilities, and what their roles are going to have in the match, and develop actually a playbook of strategies that we use to discuss later on as we go along into the competition. So next slide. The general rules that we follow when we're making strategy. First one is make our alliance mates look good. That's what we want to do. We want them to look good, even more so than making ourselves look good. That's really important. Second is being aware in the match, being aware of who you're facing on the other side, as Keenan was saying. It's really not having tunnel vision, thinking bigger holistically about where you are in the match and who you're facing. And then finally, you want to be prepared to take advantage of luck. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of luck that we had in the past. I can tell you every year where we had a lucky break, but we were in a position to take advantage of that luck. And that's really what's important if you want to win and be able to advance further into the tournaments. Next. So I'm going to talk about some past examples that illustrate each one of these principles. 2013, hopefully the video comes up. Hit another forward. There it is. Okay, so 2013, let's stop that for a second. This is going to be, this was really like a big key win for us. It was at Central Valley Regional. We managed to pick up a full court shooter, 840, excuse me. And what we did is their driver was not a great driver. It was good enough to get over to the loading. It was the scoring was up here on top in ultimate ascent, and you were loaded frisbees at the far end down here. And so they had built a shooter here that was able to actually launch the frisbee all the way across the field. We actually, in this competition, we declined a pick from the number 3 robot and decided to be the number 6 Alliance captain because we specifically wanted this robot, and it was not performing at maximum level during the competition, so we knew that it was going to slip through the draft down to us. So we selected them, and then also the second thing is we picked 295 specifically because they had a great driver, and we wanted somebody to drive counter defense to protect the 840 robot while they were shooting. So if we can start this, what we're going to show is how we got 840 into scoring position. You can see here that 840 is driving over. They're going to get it lined up here. We're here playing counter defense against the other red robots that are trying to block 840 from getting into position. Now 840 is in a protected position, and what we're going to do is we're going to have, what we did is we had them back there. At one point, we had 295 come back and play counter defense, and we went back, and the shots that 840 missed, we picked up and then scored into the top scorer. And we used this same strategy again at the World Championships to win our division, our first division win in 2013. So that's one example of how you can see that we're trying to make our alliance mates look good, and we were looking for particular traits and then designing our match strategy around the traits that they had. So the next match is 2014. This is the, I always call it aerial assault. Aerial assist, excuse me. It was aerial assault because robots would ram at full speed and then knock each other out of, knock them off the offline. So this one, the important thing was thinking about, all 3 robots had to touch the big yoga ball in order to get maximum points for each cycle. And the maximum points you could get out of a cycle, I think, was 50 points, which was a big difference. Scoring at the end only got you 10 points out of that cycle. So you were each one had to touch, you got 30 points doing that, and then you had to throw one over the truss for another 10 points. So what we were doing was trying to maximize the perfect cycle if we could. And the key part of this is that there were some robots that really weren't that capable of being able to drive. We helped set them up so that they can participate in the cycles at the beginning, and then we played in the middle in order to manage the flow on the field. We weren't playing at the end to score. We left that to another robot to do the actual scoring at the end. And what we did with that, if you'll watch, is this particular robot I think this is a rookie bot. What we did is we showed up, we knew that they only had a drivetrain. We gave them one of our arms off of our robot so that they could actually inbound a ball. And they used that arm for all 10 of their matches, even though I think they might have played against us in one match even. But we needed them in order to win this match. And if you hit the play, hopefully it goes, you'll see what's going to happen. She inbounds, it rolls through, that gives us 10 points. We pick up the ball, we shoot it over the truss, that gives us another 10 points. The scorer picked up the ball at the end, put it into the goal, that scored another 10 points, plus they scored in the high goal and gave us 50 points. All because we focused on the fact that this robot here had to have a role in this match. That was one of our main focuses of doing that. Next one is 2017. Okay, sometimes you need to know what are the vulnerabilities of your opponents. In this case, we were watching this competition. The 2017 game's a bit difficult to explain, but anyway, one of the key things, there was gear running that was going on, but this one we're going to focus on the yellow balls, the fuel that's in this. And what they're doing is you shoot the fuel into these boilers up here, and I guess there's a boiler here and a boiler here. And then the key thing is there's actually these bins along the side that each had 50 fuel in them. So there was like 600 balls on the field, roughly. You started the autonomous with 10 balls. You could get a dump of another 50 balls and shoot them during the autonomous, and most teams focused on the autonomous. But there was also, you could score during the teleop. It counted 1/3 less during the teleop. The important thing in here is that one of our rival teams, 330, which Beachbots, they retired in 2019. No, it was 2019 that they retired. So they had an excellent team. They beat us in the 2016 World Championship semifinals. And they always played at top level. They had a very good robot this year, but they had one weakness that we noticed during the competition. And if you can play it, let's see what happens. So what's going to happen is we discovered that they could not pick up balls off the ground. They could only pick them up out of the bins. Watch what happens. What are we doing at the beginning? If this is red, look at all those balls going to the ground in the first 10 seconds of the match. That's what we did. 330 couldn't score another ball for the rest of the match. All they could do was gear run, and they were capped. Their score was capped. They couldn't get past the maximum limit of gear running and with rotors at that point. So what we did is we noticed their vulnerability, we exploited it, and we won the match because we did that. So moving on to the next one. And we ended up winning that division that year because we did that strategy. So this is the 2017 competition. This time we're going to look at the gear side. So this is one that's doesn't involve us at all, but this alliance, the Alliance 2337, they were kind of a weak alliance, but they figured something out when they were watching this game, that you had to there's 3 posts around the side of the pilot house, and so that allowed teams to come in. They could pick any one of the 3 posts to put their gear on. Well, so what they did instead, if you can go back and start it again, watch what the 2 blue robots do right here. What is that blue robot doing right there? It's parking right in front of the post so that the Red Alliance has no access. And they park on the other side too. So what they do is they closed off 2 of the 3 gear posts. It was totally legal to do that. And so they couldn't go and score any gears. It kept the other alliance from being able to maximize the number of gears and rotors that they could score. And meanwhile, the other team, 2337, they were shooting fuel. So they were scoring a lot of fuel points. They would win with low scores. But because they used their own defensive strategy, this really unique strategy, they were able to keep the other team's score even lower. It was a totally unique defensive strategy, and it worked out great for them. They made it to the finals of the Michigan State Championships. They finally got overwhelmed, basically, in the final matches, but they got really far into the competition with that alliance. So next one. This one is This one's a fun one because this is thinking about clear roles. And you actually will see this in the game this year. When a match flow is really going super well, all 3 robots this year are running in a chain in synchronous with each other, where each one is going into the load station, another one's midway down on the load station, and the third one is scoring. And then when you have that loop going, a chain going, you can just see the score just going up really fast, and all the robots are really efficient if they're running at the same speed. Another example is from 2018, where we divided up the roles for the 3 robots. In this game, you had to put cubes on the balances, and you were trying to get the balances so that you could dominate the score. It was time-based scoring for the number of seconds that you held the balance on your side in the game that year. And so this is an example of how we basically split up the roles so that the robots didn't compete with each other for their particular talents. There was actually one last thing is you would also put the cubes into the exchange, what was called the exchange. One of those cubes would be picked up and pushed in, and you would get extra points for doing that as well. So if you push the video, you can see what happens here. 399, our first pick is over on the opposite side of the field. They're picking up cubes. They're putting them in the switch, the blue side switch. We're picking up cubes right here on the red side switch. We're going to put them up here in the high balance. We've been putting cubes up here. And then finally, we have 1410. Their job is to take cubes, put them in the switch on the low side. And then they also take cubes and put them into the exchange. None of us are interfering with each other. We're clearly doing this strategy. Now, if you go back and just play, let's see what the Blue Alliance is doing. So the Blue Alliance is quite a pretty good team, but if you look, they're crossing paths. They bump into each other. They can't get past 399. They're kind of fumbling around over here. So their roles, they had not really clearly assigned their roles of how to maximize their score versus what we had done in the Red Alliance side, where we had really assigned clear roles for that. And then, I think this is the last one, and then luck. So this is where you have to have some luck, and you have to hope that you have good alliance mates as well. This is the semifinals at the 2015 World Championship. 118 is our robot. This is just after autonomous. 118 had picked up one of the trash cans that were set out in the middle. And you can see right there that the trash can is stuck on their hook. And they're driving around, swinging around this hook. And it turns out that actually the driver was blind in one eye, so he didn't really have true 3D vision. He does an amazing job of driving. And a combination of the fact that he was lucky not to knock over the stack. If he hit the stack, we had luck, it didn't roll off. But then he actually goes and manages to keep that can from hitting anything else. He was aware of what was going on, and he manages to complete the rest of the scoring. He actually contributed a fair amount to the scoring. We ended up winning the match by a couple of points. One of the keys actually was that the other piece of luck that won us this competition is 1671 was still available as the 24th pick. Somehow they slipped through. They had finished ranked second at the Sacramento Regional, the same regional where 118 was. We had teamed up at 118. So it was actually the top 3 qualifiers from the Sacramento Regional were all on one alliance at the championship. That's like never happens anywhere. And it was just because other teams had overlooked what they did. And so the luck part in this is that we were able to pick up 1671 and develop a match strategy around their role in this in such a way that they were able to pick up the slack when 118 wasn't able to perform it at maximum ability in that one particular match. So, and with that, I think that might be the end of our thing. Want you to all know one thing is please take a shot of this QR code and answer the survey. Up there, there's questionnaires. If you've gone to some of the other workshops too, if you haven't completed surveys for them, you should do that as well. But we're ready to answer some questions for you. Actually, Keena's ready to answer questions for you. Because I'm at the end of my knowledge.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the first part of this presentation. I was at
You didn't miss anything at all, actually.
I was at our last match of the day. But yeah, so if you have any questions or just comments about our presentation, I will do my best to answer anything that you have. So yeah, I'll open it up. What's up?
How would you solve like conflicts if two teams want the same role in like a match?
Okay, so in that case, we would try to use our hard data to back it up. So we actually have a match strategist app which accumulates all of the live data that we're tracking through our scouting system, who are in the stands and are looking at every single match. So we do our best just to back up all of the decisions that we make with hard data, which it generally makes it easier for clear roles to be decided, and just the numbers just show, like, your performance on the field is the proof in the pudding. So.
Right. There's a lot of times teams remember their best matches and forget their worst matches. And they say, oh yeah, we scored an auto point in every single match. And you look at the data and you go, well, no, actually you only did it out of 4 out of 6 matches. And so that can be an important turning point in the conversation when they actually see the data and realize that what their perception of what they were doing doesn't match with the quantitative data.
All right, any other questions? Yeah?
How would you guarantee that the data that your scout is collected were accurate?
Okay, so we have the luxury of being able to bring a 44-person travel team. And in fact, 21 of those students are dedicated towards being objective scouts at a normal, during event competition. So we actually have 3 scouts assigned to each robot at a time. So we do best of 3 data validation. So if 2 of our scouts, they get the same score, our 3rd scout doesn't, then we would take what our 2 agreeing scouts have marked down, and then we would disregard what the 3rd scout says. And we have a system where we have a scout precision tracker, and we have data validation because we have the room and the resources to be able to bring a lot of scouts. So if Andy wants to add anything.
Oh, so we have 3 scouts, so we basically take an average of all of their what they get in a match, and it's slightly more complicated than the average. We have regressions and things. It's a lot of code, but since we have the luxury of having multiple people, we can average your data and compare it with data from TBA as well, and we can get a pretty accurate, 80 to 90% accurate estimate of what the team actually did, and that's only because we have a lot of scouts.
Is there any way to make it more accurate with only 6 scouters per match?
Good question. It is definitely a lot more difficult. I mean, honestly, I don't think I have a good answer besides.
So if you're down to 6 scouts, one of the possibilities is to join a scouting alliance with other teams. And then you can combine your data and do an assessment of relative accuracy and figure out. It took us a while to figure out an algorithm to measure against the Blue Alliance. It took us several years to come up with an algorithm. If you read our scouting white paper, there's, I think, more of a discussion of the algorithm in there in order for that. So, and feel free to reach out to us as well about that.
Yeah, our scouting white paper is publicly available on our website at citruscircuits.org. If you click into the resources tab, we have the entire scouting white paper, detailed PDF form. And then also at events, there tends to be teams who do publicly release their scouting data. So if you want to check against their scouting data, that does tend to help with accuracy. But yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to make one other point too, is that especially if you're climbing in ability and your team is competing at a higher and higher level, may want your drive coach to take on the role of being the alliance coach. So especially if you have a good driver who can watch the field and works well with your operator, then your drive coach can actually take a step back and watch the entire alliance and then coach other teams to help coordinate your actions among each other during the match. And that's one of the things that we've also found is very important.
Yeah, in general, our drive team, they get a lot of practice time outside of the field. They have time to be able to work together and to communicate. And generally, they can make decisions by themselves. So optimally, we actually want our drive coach, to be able to communicate with the whole alliance and just make sure we're all working together and not just overseeing our one singular drive team.
Yeah, which gets back to a couple other philosophical points on our part, which is get the robot finished early. Mm-hmm. It's one of the important things. 2022, we had the luxury of having it done like in the second or third week. This year didn't quite go that way, but still we had it done, we had a practice bot by early week 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a week 1 competition. So, and which leads to the second point, which is really critical, practice, practice, practice. Practice driving is the most important element to being successful as a team, is having the ability for your driver and your operator to learn how the game goes, and so that they can make independent decisions away from your drive coach. In fact, our driver generally practices without our drive coach.
Yeah, they tend to have like a set of routines that they have practiced before together, and they know how to execute by themselves.
And then the drive coach is just there for times when things happen and decisions need to be made.
Mm-hmm. All right, any other questions? And I will actually expand if you guys have further questions about just like our team structure or other things on our team. I am personally on hardware design, and I'm also our team captain, so if you have any additional questions, I am happy to answer them. All right, well, okay, in that case, thank you all so much for coming to this fall workshop series. Please fill out our QR code to give us some feedback, but otherwise, you guys are free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.